Hey everyone, my name's Bex and I work for the Inspiring Ipswich project. In this video, I get to sit down with Bridget McIntyre, who at time of recording is the High Sheriff of Suffolk. We're going to talk about her life in business, in the charity sector, her passion for helping people be the best they can be, how she's dealt with a once-in-a-lifetime role in the year of COVID, and much more. So stick around for this great conversation, you don't want to miss it. So I've had the pleasure of meeting you several times through attending the Forge Community Church, but I kind of looked you up online before we did this interview, and you have this amazing biography, much of which I didn't know about. So I'd love if you could give us a flyby of the highlights of the roles that you've been able to occupy, and land us with the role that you're currently in, which is not a role that many people will find themselves in their lifetime. So yeah, just take us through kind of your professional life up to this point.
Yeah, of course. And you know, one of the things I quite like, Bex, is that you didn't know my background. In a way, I will talk about it, but sometimes I like people to just take me as they see me today. I think that's really important in life generally. Yeah, I'm going to kill the conversation. I always was able to by telling people I was an accountant, but that's what I trained to be. So I left school not doing particularly well, but good enough to go to university, good enough to get a job as a training accountant, but found a passion in business and found a passion in numbers because they tell a story, and developed a passion in leading people as well. So they became my thing through my career. And my initial part of my career was a businesswoman. A businesswoman initially in the 80s, when there weren't that many businesswomen. Only person to be on a board for I was 9 years on my own on a board at Norwich Union, which was an interesting time for me. But worked in lots of different industries, worked with lots of really interesting people, and kind of developed and progressed to eventually run a business. So I was eventually ended up as the CEO of Royal and Son Alliance, an insurance company that had 10,000 employees and 3 billion turnover, which is would have been a surprise for most people who had met me when I was little or when I was young to expect that to happen. But I loved it. But about 17 years ago, I started to not love it as much and start to explore what my other opportunities might be. And had thought my career would end at a certain age, and I would then move into something very different. The thing I read a book called Holy Discontent, and what it was, it challenged you to think about what was the thing that really got you in the world. And the thing that really got me in the world was seeing people with talent not believing in themselves. And I was so lucky that I was given opportunity. I had parents who told me I could. I had great training and opportunity in all the different businesses that I worked in. And yet there were so many other people who didn't believe in themselves. And I kind of started to come up with this idea of this social enterprise that would help with people who didn't have that chance, whose life hadn't started well, or life had kicked them and they hadn't become the person that they could become. So that was my little plan. So 10 years ago, I left my corporate role full time in London and set up a social enterprise and charity, social enterprise called Dream On, because that's what my husband said when I said I was going to do it. And the Blossom charity followed 3 years later because people wanted to donate to our work. It's been a really fantastic journey creating this business that can self-sustain and helps people, initially women, but now we work with men as well, helping them to become the person they could become through training and development and coaching. And alongside that, I'm a non-exec director, so I use my corporate experience, I sit on the boards of a couple of companies. I initially did that around the country and overseas. I now do it purely in Suffolk. Mm-hmm. So I work for Adnams and I work for a company called Not Cuts. So that's my life. And then in April 2020, I became High Sheriff of Suffolk, which is a 1 year only role. And yeah, I've taken that role and I do that in addition to my other responsibilities.
Great. It's amazing just listening to that journey, and there's so much I'd love to dig into. We'll get a chance to talk a bit more about the Blossom charity and your passion for that shortly, but there we go, the High Sheriff of Suffolk, which is an amazing job title. Perhaps tell us a bit more about that. But then you said you entered that role in April 2020. So it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm sure there was a lot that was leading up to it. And then bam, COVID hit, and it must have completely transformed what that year was going to look like for you. So tell us how you've been able to respond to that kind of gap between what you were looking ahead to when you took on that role and what it's actually been like.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I do other things as well. I wasn't going to be a full-time High Sheriff. I had to integrate it into my other work and free up time to be High Sheriff. I'd done quite a lot of planning about how I could be a good High Sheriff, and then 23rd of March we had lockdown, and I realised it wasn't relevant. My planning wasn't relevant, so I had to work out what could I do to support Suffolk in the role as High Sheriff. And really, what you do as a High Sheriff is you support the justice system. So you kind of support the judges, the police, the fire service, all the people that support kind of work, the probation service, domestic violence, etc., the prisons. And it was, how can I support them when I can't visit them, and I'll have to work with them very differently. So that's when letter writing came to the fore. And I've written about 1,000 letters, handwritten letters to people, and then I had lots of conversations over Zoom, and was able to really listen and learn about what was going on in their lives. And I guess because in my social enterprise and charity we do training for businesses and I do business coaching, I felt like I was doing a bit of my role, because listening to people and hearing what was going on and just asking questions and helping people think well was kind of part of the role, I guess, and to really appreciate what it must be like for people, because you were talking to leaders who were just really up against it, under enormous pressure, and just trying to find ways to kind of support and thank them really well and properly. That became part of what I did, and that was really the initial focus of the first 3 months was that. But then as the year progressed, issues started to emerge that really I could give my attention to. So one of them was the increase in domestic violence caused by lockdown. So I met with a group of people and we were looking at what are the resources in Suffolk to support it, and are they good enough, and is more resource needed? So really got an understanding of that and where the gaps might be, and sought funding for the gaps in domestic violence. So that was really, I think, good to do, and there's some great training, and I learned about the training that's available and kind of promoted it as best I could in my way. And then I also, when with the Black Lives Matter campaign, I realised that I had always thought I wasn't racist. Well, I just say I thought. I know I'm not a racist. However, I wasn't anti it. And what I decided was actually I could take a stance being anti-racist in the county, and take a stance there as well. So to do that, I decided to learn. So I did. We were allowed to walk outside at that point, and I met with groups from different communities from across Suffolk, different ethnic communities, and I walked with them, and I listened and I learned. And my question was, what is life like in Suffolk? Tell me what it's like. Tell me what you experience. Tell me what would make it easier. Tell me what would make it better. And I just learned more and more and more about how people's lives were impacted by things, and that was fascinating. Hearing from Ore from Nigeria about how she came here and how hard it was to settle, and how she was in an abusive relationship and she had no support for that abusive relationship. So it's really interesting. Really talented people coming to this country and not being able to use their skills because they weren't relevant. How do we find a way for companies to give them opportunities? Young people seeking role models. So I did that work as well. And then the final piece, which is my business background, I'm afraid, was about charities need to survive. So what is the economic model that means charities can survive? So I've been working with some charities, just trying to understand how we can make charities work. And because I run a social enterprise and a charity, it's foremost in my mind how we do that. Because you've got to find a way to be able to operate through this, provide the services you want to provide, but work financially as well. So I kind of given those things as my focus.
Yeah. Wow. I absolutely love your humility to say that you realized that there was so much for you to learn through that season and through some of the things that were being brought to our attention in domestic abuse and in the Black Lives Matter campaign as well. I think that humility is so valuable in leadership, and it's great to listen to where that's led you.
And I think, and I really agree with you that, because humility in leadership is one of the most important things, really, isn't it? To really know that you don't know everything, and to learn and listen about the people. For me, when I work with people, it's how can I understand them to help them be their best, and how do I enable and help them, because that's what we do. We can serve people. So of course I set direction and I have expectations, but how do we get the best out of people is really important.
Wow. I know that you're a woman of faith, Bridget, and I'd love to hear how that's intersected in your life and work, how that's given kind of direction and meaning to those passions that you're talking about, of bringing out the best in people and investing in people. Can you share a bit about that?
So I was so my childhood was in a little village in the north of England, where everybody in the village went to church virtually, and we all went to Sunday school. But I drew away from it when I was in my late teens, because I felt there was a double standard of life, and I could live a good life without God in my life, because I didn't like what I was seeing. I didn't really realise that was irrelevant. But at that point I did. And then I continued in my career until I was in my kind of late 30s, when I suddenly thought, I don't like what life's about. There's more to life than this. And that's when I became a Christian. So it was quite late in life, in a way, because I kind of lived out in the world and then became a Christian. And when I became a Christian, it really just gave me this incredibly solid base from which to act, which has been phenomenal. When I want to do things, I really consider and pray about what I'm going to do. And that is very, very important to me, to work out why am I doing it, what's the purpose of it. And I feel I get huge support from my faith as well. But it's made me, our Dream On would not exist and Blossom would not exist if it wasn't for my faith. I don't believe, because that's what drove me to set it up. It's not a faith-based charity, it's a secular charity as such, but my faith drives it. And the way we do business and the way we operate, I always say with kindness, is one of the biggest and most important things for the way we work. That is driven by my beliefs about how things could be. But it certainly strengthens me to do what I can do. And I get huge support from it, which I think we need, and it makes me brave. I've always thought I was a bit of a freedom fighter, but sometimes it's hard being a freedom fighter when you haven't got a solid base behind you. And I feel I have a more solid base to be a freedom fighter than I used to be.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to get that quote on my wall. I love what you're talking about. Just constant theme throughout what you're saying, not just to dream it, but to do it, and to help other people, not just dream, but to do. And maybe those people who have lost their dream, to give it back to them. So let's get back to talking about Dream On and the Blossom charity. Tell us more about your passion for that, particularly how it started with your passion for helping women be all that they can be. We're recording this interview off the back of International Women's Day yesterday, so it feels very appropriate to be speaking on that particularly.
And it's interesting. And I say I was brought up to not believe as a woman that I was any more insignificant in the world than a man. And I was really fortunate in that. That's how I was brought up. And I was really fortunate to have a lot of support. So I didn't get to the level in business I got to just by, in my own, oh, I'm really good. I got training, I got development, I had coaching, I had support. That's what helped me to be me and to remain true to myself. And so my desire was to find a way to be able to offer that to people who don't feel like that. And I didn't know if it would work. So 10 years ago when I had this idea, 10 years ago when we launched it, the idea was earlier, we did it through pilots. So we did some pilots with groups of women from the Forge Church. And it was the idea of the pilot to see, does it make a difference? Does it help you? Are you more enabled? Are you able to have the life that uses your skills and talents more? And we were quite excited by the results from the pilot to give us the confidence that we could make this happen. And I say us because it's a phenomenal team that have made all this happen. And it's wonderful to watch the people involved grow and develop themselves through being part of it. And we've got this really kind of weird business model because we sell clothes and we make money from selling clothes, and we do styling because I like clothes and image, and styling reflects who you are by how you look is what I believe we should do. It gives you confidence. But we use that money to offer free makeover days for women going through difficult times or women going through cancer treatment to regain their confidence about how they look. And then we do training for businesses. And we do training, coaching into businesses as well, and we earn money from that. And that money is used to help fund our work, to give people free 14-month-long programs where they come for one-to-one coaching, training, makeovers, and just get the life they deserve. So it's a really intense program to really help change happen and change sustain. Because again, I'm not really interested in going, oh, we've run 100 programs, whatever. I'm really interested in the individual, and is this working, and is this making a difference, and then are they making a difference? Because we train a lot about pay forward, the concept of giving out, giving back, because I'm a strong believer that you give first, and if things come from it, so be it, and if they don't, so be it. You've given, you've had a generous heart. So part of our theory is that kind of way of working. So that's how we've got it to work. Last year we started working with men. So we ran our first men's program because men were complaining that they were seeing women getting the support, and what about us? And it has been phenomenal.
Wow,
absolutely phenomenal. Really excited by the results of it, and particularly through this pandemic. So we've been running it virtually. We've met where we could. We've run it virtually where we couldn't. And really the men saying, gosh, they don't know how they'd have coped with some of the things that happened to them if they hadn't had the resources of the programme. So, we'll be working with men, we'll be working with women as we go forward. Used to work with teenagers as well, but my year as High Sheriff has taught me there's a lot better people offering work for teenagers than we are. Okay. So we aren't going to do that. We will support teenage charities by supporting the leaders, but we will not do the work with young people because there's much better people than us. Yeah. So let's find our right place, which is working with men and women and working with leaders of charities, but step back from the other bit as well. So that was quite interesting for me to learn that.
Yeah, it's incredible work. I'm just aware listening to you that there will be so many people at this point as we move out of COVID who have just had just a tough year, whether it's through unemployment or just dealing with isolation or expectations that haven't been met or all sorts of things. It'd be great just if you could speak to those people who watch this, who are just feeling beaten down by their life circumstances and maybe just thinking I'm not worth anything, or I'm not going to produce anything of worth, and what would you say to those people?
So I do think there's a lot of people really badly impacted by this. I agree with you, and we've finding a way to work through that and recover from it is going to be a process for some people, and it could be quite a long process. I think for me the most important thing is to admit the vulnerability and get support. Find support for what's going on for you. I mean, I always say I still find support, I still need it. This year's been a tough year just to be High Sheriff and work out how to do it. So I've had some help to work out how to do it. I didn't know the answers. I needed some help to do it. So find support. And for me, it's about reconnecting with your purpose. What are you here for? So try and reconnect with your purpose and work out what you're going to do about that, and create a plan. I mean, change won't happen just by chance. It requires plans. It requires support. I mean, it requires prayer. It requires, for me, faith is a big part of that change. And we are running programs at the moment. So we're running a program, it's called the Reboot Program. And that's to help people who've been badly impacted by this to get going again. It's 8 hours of training. It's not, a 14-month program. But the idea of it is people get something from that. They may want to come on our programs as well, which is a fantastic introduction to our work. And we're not the only organisation offering support at this time. But if you're interested, contact us, the Reboot Programme at the Blossom Charity, or via Dream On, to find out a little bit more about it. Because there are things that can offer you support, but you've got to take a step towards it. We can't stand still and expect it to sort. It won't. We always say, we always congratulate everyone who comes on our programs, because we say you're being so brave because you've admitted life's not right and you've made a step forward. So you might not be feeling great about yourself, but hey, you've done really well because you've said that and you're doing something. So really, it's about just taking that first step. And always for me, it's like I might have a direction of where I want to go, but my question is always, what's the next step? Not how am I going to get there, because I don't know actually, but I do know how to take a first step. So I would be encouraging people to do that as well.
That's so helpful. Admit the vulnerability, seek the support, and reconnect with your purpose. That's so helpful.
Yeah. You summarised very well,
Oh no, you did. Those were very clear 3 points.
You do. You summarised very well.
So you said at the end there, I always want to be asking what's the next step, or at least what's the first step. What is the next step for you, as you'll be handing over the reins in April as High Sheriff? What's next in your life?
I will. So I'm quite excited because it really gives me a chance to move forward with Dream On and Blossom. But the thing I'm most excited about in terms of that is that through this last year, I've met lots of leaders of charities who I've asked them, what development, what support do you get? And it's clear that perhaps they don't get all that they would like. So we've developed a programme, it's called the Alitus Programme at Dream On. So we've been developing it and designing it over the last few months, which will have 12 to 14 people on it who will be leaders, but they won't just be leaders of charities. There will be somebody from the church, I'm hoping. We've got some people from the public sector, from the health system, from the education system, from private sector and charities. So it's like a whole system picture, and we will work with this group of people for a year to help them grow and develop personally and grow and develop their organisations. And I'm going to be leading that, and I'm really excited and I'm really daunted by it too, because I feel I'm going to be working with some really top-notch people, and I need to make this experience for them really worthwhile. And I know that by doing it, I'm going to grow a lot by my personal involvement in it. But that's probably my big thing that I'm going to plan on to do through the next 12 months. Putting into practice some of the stuff I've learned, as always.
That's exciting. I can't wait to see what's next for you and what's next for Dream On and all those initiatives that are coming up. That's sounds like amazing work. I'm so thankful that you've taken the time to chat with me today. It's been massively inspiring for me, just as a young woman, kind of still figuring out what I'm here for and trying to connect with my purpose. And just a huge inspiration to listen to you today. And I'm sure that's the same for many people who are listening to this back. So thank you so much for that. Is there anything else that you want to share before?
I've learned through this year, I've learned about Inspiring Ipswich. And I've spoken to Rhiannon and understood about the work of Inspiring Ipswich, and I'm just so pleased it's happening. I hadn't realised, and I guess I should have known, but I didn't. And it sounds really exciting. So I really want to encourage the plans and the work and the energy that's behind it. And of course, it's been a hard year with the pandemic, hasn't it, to get the momentum. But just it's such a great thing to be doing, and we need it. So I just want to say thanks for you for being involved, and everyone else who's involved with Inspiring Ipswich. It really matters.
Thank you so much.